All right. Welcome, everyone. It's so good to see you all here. For those listening to the recording, thank you for taking the time to do that. We last week we had a call, cultivating peace in your interior home, or cultivating peace in a time of uncertainty, and the focus was on our interior home. And as a team, we've been kind of brainstorming ways to serve in this season. And the way this works, for those of you that are new to these Sunday night Zooms, we have several coaches on our team that lead their own challenge groups or communities, that online communities. And then we gather on Sundays and take turns leading our Sunday night calls to add extra value, to try to serve you in your needs. Well, we decided during this whole pandemic season is to open these up to the public, or open them up to our free groups, just because we want to share. There's a lot of goodness that happens on these calls, and we're really glad to have you here to be a part of it. And so last week's call was all about your interior, like how to cultivate peace within, how to help yourself secure your oxygen mask. And if you didn't get a chance, or you want the recording, just ask your coach and they can send that to you. And it's kind of turned into a series. And who knows how long the series will last, just like who knows how long the season's going to last, you know? But we were brainstorming and talking as leaders of what we could do, what we need, because I find a lot of times as coaches, even what we need is what you need. It's not like we might be 2 steps ahead, or maybe we have a few more tools in our toolbox, but tools get dusty when you don't use them, you know? And so this week I'm really excited to have Sarah speaking about habits and things to cultivate, because I find that, and she's going to talk more about this, so I'm going to hand it over, but this is like a temporary normal. But in it, we want to make some new normal. There are some things I'm doing now as a mom and a wife in my home that I don't ever want to change. Like, we've created a habit to pray the rosary every day at 4:00 the last week. And I want to keep that, you know what I mean? And I've been getting up at 5:45 in the morning and hopping on at 6 a.m. to work out and pray. I don't want to change that, you know? But there are other things too. And so Sarah's going to really speak to that tonight. And I'm very excited to have her share. And, you know, we just want you to soak up and to be surrounded, because in this time of social distancing, or shelter in place, or whatever you want to call it, you know, we're surrounded, a lot of us, by somebody, whether it's we're at home with our family or we have lots of kids, but it can still feel isolating and lonely, because it just can. Like, I thought the weirdest thing I ever thought to explain to someone was when I had 5 children and I felt alone in my house, because I have people who need me all day long, you know? And so it's okay to recognize you have a need for community, and it's okay to give yourself permission to tap into some community in this season. And I'm really thankful for all of you joining us tonight. And for those listening to the recording, talk to whoever invited you about the other opportunities for you to get surrounded, and Sarah will talk a little more about that too. So thank you guys for being here. I'm excited to hear what Sarah has to say. I'm going to put it on speaker view because I always forget to do that, and I'm going to hand it over.
Hey, you guys, I hope that you have a pencil and paper near you, because I'm going to give you some stuff. Some of it will be food for thought. Some of it will be really great quotes that I've come across recently. I love a good quote. I love a good visual cue, things to post around my house to remind myself of the stuff that I thought was a really good idea at the time. You know, when you see something and you're like, oh my gosh, I've got to remember that. And you might not even need to remember the whole thing. You just need an image or a word to kind of trigger you back into either that state or that memory of a conversation, or a scripture verse, or whatever it is, a quote from a speaker, or whatever it is that you kind of went, oh yes, I got to remember that. Giving yourself a little visual cue is important. So you need to write some things down as we're going, so that you have that. So if there's something that you go, yeah, I got to remember that, you have note of it. And these, like Kelly said, these are recorded and you can go back and you can re-listen. But if you listen to a 45-minute call and you just can't remember one part of it, it's nice to have it in your notes. So if you don't have a piece of paper and pencil handy, grab it real quick so that you have a place to jot down what it is that speaks to you. And so the first thing that I wanted to mention was actually a quote that I got in an email from Tony Robbins. I like to pretend that it's really actually from Tony Robbins and not just like some random person in his organization. I'd be like, oh, I get a message from Tony Robbins today. If you don't know who he is, YouTube him and block out some time. But he's really an incredible mindset speaker who really has a unique and deep way of looking at things that I really have learned a lot from. But I got an email today, and the first part of it said, it's time to wake up and become conscious of the patterns that are currently unconscious and shaping the way that you feel. And I was like, oh, that really, really hit me hard, that how many things you just kind of go through the motions of, and they greatly affect your day, and they weren't even conscious decisions. Because right now you have this opportunity where in some cases the rug's been pulled out of you from under you a little bit, but you have an opportunity to evaluate. The quote was, it's time to wake up and become conscious of the patterns that are currently unconscious and shaping the way you feel. I'm going to try to hold on. Let me see if I can copy and paste. We're going to see just how good I am. If I can copy and paste and talk at the same time, because I can't always see the chat. So right now, a lot has changed. Yes, so much has changed in this season of our lives. And we have the opportunity to take some control, really, that we may not have had before. And that sounds like a strange way of thinking about it. But last week, Kelly on our call, and again, if you weren't on it, you can get the recording. Whoever invited you tonight has the access to last week's recording, even if you weren't on that call live. Last week, Kelly talked about where to put your focus and narrowing in on what's important to you. And if you've never thought about that before, I want to ask you a question. I want you to ask yourself, who do I want to have been when this quarantine is over? How do I want my children to remember me in a time of crisis or a time of uncertainty? How do I want to have been? Who do I want to have been in this season? And that's a really big question. But the good news is you're a smart person and you were loved into existence by a big God. And he gives us things that we can't handle alone, but never abandons us when we reach for him. And even by nature of being on this call tonight, I haven't looked to see. There's a ton of us on the call. From where I sit, it looks like it's 20 people, 25 people. It just keeps growing. And that's a beautiful thing because you guys, this is a community. Everybody here wants to not just drift through the next however many weeks and the next however many years of your life. They don't want to just drift through. They want to be intentional about their life and their purpose and understanding that. So like Kelly said, my name is Sarah Kroger. I am a Team Beachbody coach. I am a mom of 6. I am a speaker and a teacher. I am a homeschooler and a homesteader and a wife, and we're in a military family, and it doesn't sound like a lot until I list it out. And then I kind of go, oh, that's a lot of stuff. And I kind of forget that not everybody starts their day milking goats, but that's just become my norm. And it's just something we do, right? There's a lot of things in your life that you don't even do. It's like that quote at the beginning, you're unconscious of these kinds of things and you just do them. And when someone who doesn't do the same thing as you looks at you, you're like, oh my gosh, that's a ton of stuff. But it's just a different hat, like those of you who are teaching and now planning for distance learning and trying to surprise homeschool your kids and trying to still be on meetings and trying to still keep your house not look like someone just picked it up and shook it and trying to, now you have to make the most of your time. And it's a lot. It's a lot. And that is really one of the biggest reasons why we congregate on Sunday nights, why we open this up. And so this is something that we have done for our challengers for years. And now we are, at least for the time being, broadening it to bless as many people as we can with this opportunity for community and leaning in. Because you guys, this is such an unreal time. And as I've been reflecting on what really has been about 2 weeks since everybody really locked it down, right? We're going into the 3rd week of of social distancing and things being closed and schools being closed and businesses being closed and all those kinds of things. People trying to work from home or trying to wonder how much they can do and all of that. And I feel like the first week was like shock and uncertainty and scrambling. You know, some people were panicking. That was when the great like toilet paper debacle of the United States occurred. And the second week, last week, I feel like a lot of people, it was acceptance and waiting. Like, okay, this is happening, and wondering how long it was going to go and just kind of waiting for it to get bad and see how bad it got. But I really feel like this week is our opportunity to get our feet underneath us and make a plan, and deciding that we aren't just going to get through it. We aren't just going to wait and see what happens, that we are going to put our feet down and take control of what we can control. But right away, as soon as I talk about making a plan, as soon as I talk about taking some action, as soon as I talk about any of that, that's when the resistance sets in. Either in your mind, or you go to all the things you have to do, or all the reasons why you can't do what you know you should do. But I got to tell you, like, the reasons why you can't do whatever it is you feel like you should do, the reasons really haven't changed, right? Before, you couldn't take care of yourself because there wasn't enough time and there was too much on your plate. You were too busy, right? But some people now are saying, well, I'm knocked off my routine and it's so hard to work from home and surprise homeschool and worry about my parents and pay my bills and 100 other things. But it still comes down to the same couple of reasons. But like I said, by the fact that you're here tonight tells me that you don't want to just coast through. Even if it's not super clear, you have a vision or a hope of what this time is going to be like, and that who the you that comes out of this is going to be like. And that's what I want you to hone in on tonight. And we're going to talk a little bit about some nitty gritty. But before I get to that, I wanted to share with you a couple of ideas that were popping up as I was deciding what I wanted to share and how to share it with you. And there's, I'm going to give you a couple of quotes, like I said, and a couple of scripture verses. And I want to say to you that if you don't share the same faith background that I do, that's okay. You can still get some value out of this. You can still get a lot of value out of this. And if you are not one to quote scripture, you can view it as, you know, an inspirational quote that you found on the internet, and that's okay too. Or a good lesson or a good proverb that you read somewhere. But I want to share a couple things with you. Our team has a verse and kind of like a quote that kind of guides our whole year. And as we're thinking about our vision for the year, something pops up, and it cracks me up what we chose for this year and how it is reflected now, even though it's only March. When we picked this back in December, for the year, what it has become in such a short amount of time. But when we look at the book of Habakkuk, I'm going to read to you just 2 verses from there. It's from Habakkuk 2, verse 2 and 3. Record the vision and inscribe it on tablets, that the one who reads it may run. For the vision is yet for the appointed time. For the vision is yet for the appointed time. It hastens towards the goal and will not fail. And that jumped out to me because I think that deciding who you are and who you want to be sets your feet in motion, and it shows some confidence to the people around you. So I know, I don't know everybody on this call. I know a lot of you, but I don't know everybody. And I don't know that everybody, I think everybody on the call is a woman. It's still relevant if you're not, but I know that not necessarily everybody is a mom, but most of us are. And I think that the image still, you'll get the idea if you've ever spent time with little kids. If you are hanging out with one of your kids, one of your little kids, and one of them like crashes and skins their knees or wipes out somewhere or whatever, they fall and they look at you before they decide how hurt they are. And your reaction determines how big of a reaction they have. And if you kind of go, oh my gosh, then they're like, oh, I'm hurt, you know? And then if you just go, oh, it's all right, wipe out, you're good, brush them off, give them a kiss. And they're like, oh, okay, all right, we're good, you know? And that is true in this case too. deciding who it is you want to be and how that person would react in a difficult season is recording your vision and posting it for the people around you to see it and run with it. And it gives you the opportunity to shape how this goes. And if you're one that struggles with anxiety and depression, and that's magnified in this season, it doesn't mean it's not real, and it doesn't mean you can't just wish it away, but it means that you can decide who you want to be and how that person would respond, right? I heard a quote the other day. I didn't even write this down. Somebody said you need to act how you want to feel. And I was like, oh, that's a good one. Act how you want to feel. And that's really hard sometimes. But when you can do it, when you can put yourself in that position, it really makes a difference. I, like Kelly, refuse to call this my new normal. I'll call this my current normal. But at the same time, when our doors open up again and we step out, we won't be the same people we were after this as we were before this. And so this is a really, in my mind, especially this week, a really important time. And you can look at what you've given up in this season and what you've been given. For a lot of us, it's time and closeness and focus on what you value and awareness of people who don't have the same situation as you do. I feel like a lot of people have awareness brought to them of, you know, let's pray especially for people who are stuck at home with someone who is not supportive and loving to them, or we're focusing on the kids who don't have a greater opportunity to have a home cooked meal just by being home, or, you know, those kinds of things are brought to our attention, and we can thank God for those things and let those things that we've been given be part of our new normal when our doors open again. You get to decide on purpose what you take forward after the quarantine is lifted. But in order to declare who you are, that's what my shirt says. My shirt is a quote from St. Hildegard. I put it on. This was our shirt from our team retreat this year, and it says, "Dare to declare who you are." The whole quote from St. Hildegard says, "Dare to declare who you are. It is not from the shores of silence it is not far from the shores of silence to the boundaries of speech. The path is not long, but the way is deep. You must not only walk there, you must be prepared to leap." And I think that it's been a source of encouragement for me when I was afraid to speak out. Because in order to declare who you are, you have to know who you are. And the God who loved you into existence on purpose, with purpose, and for purpose did it at exactly this time and place. So before we get too far into some specific habits that I recommend in this season, I want to ask you to keep reflecting on who it is that you want to be at the end of this. And rather than letting this big laundry list of things overwhelm you, I want you to think about 2 or 3 things that are on this long list that you might have of who you want to be. But pick for 2 or 3 things and write them down. What are 2 or 3 things that strike you as the most important for you to focus on right now? And I'll tell you, when I did this, it really surprised me because I run 2 businesses from my home. And so working from home is not a change for me. And I homeschool my kids. So having my kids home during the day is not a change for me. Having my husband home working from home all day is a change for me. But it's been interesting to not be able to go anywhere because as homeschoolers, like I always tell people who have their kids home in a surprise way right now, like what you're doing is not homeschooling, not because what you're doing isn't good or important or, I don't know, less than what I'm doing or whatever. It's because you're trapped at home and you can't go do all of the fun thing that you can do when you're homeschooling. You know, like it's even harder because you are trying to do it by surprise and you haven't had a chance to set it up and all of that. And I think that rather than letting this perfection mindset overwhelm us, we can stop and look at those 2 to 3 things that strike you as the most important. And for me personally, when I asked myself that question, I was struck with this desire for togetherness. that I felt like I hadn't had with my family. We were in such a rhythm, and even though everybody was home, everybody had kind of gotten to a groove and had been doing their own thing, right? And so what is it, 2 or 3 things, write them down, that feel like the most important for you to focus on? And then we'll take those few things and build some habits around them. And then the first question that pops into mind is like, well, why habits? Why do I need to build a habit around it? Well, for about 4 reasons. The first is because success leaves clues. And if you look at anybody who is successful, if you look at anybody who's successful in the area that you would like to be successful, not as a comparison, but as a learning from them. If somebody knows, like when we started homesteading and I wanted to learn about chickens, I asked everybody I could get my hands on who had ever owned chicken or seen chicken or fed chickens. And I asked like millions of questions. And if you were willing to answer, I was willing to keep asking, right? Because I wanted to learn, I wanted to soak it in. And so when you look at people who are successful in the area that you want to be successful, if you feel like they have a strong marriage and you get to know them a little bit and they really do, it's not just a show, or if you feel like they have quality bonds with their children, if you have little kids and you know somebody who has a good quality relationship with their teenager, ask them what they did when their kids were little. What did you do when your kids were little to cultivate this relationship with your teenagers, right? Because success leaves clues. And you don't want to necessarily be a carbon copy of somebody, but you want to learn from what they did to get where they got, right? So the second reason why you build habits versus just winging it and hoping for the best is because those habits become your scaffolding on days that you struggle. And so if you think about what a scaffolding is, it's the not necessarily pretty, but functional structure that you put on the side of a building while you're restoring it or painting it or laying brick or whatever it is, while the construction is going up. And it allows you to keep all your tools handy, and it keeps you safe so you're not like gripping for life on the side of a building while you're trying to paint it as well, right? So it holds you up and gives you a steady place to stand while you work. So if you're trying to have work on a new aspect of your life, you can't just wish it into existence and be perfect at it the next day. You have to practice it, right? And so habits and setting up habits become those scaffolding. You're starting a new piece of you and you need that support. And so, for example, following a meal plan or a workout schedule or reading a devotional, those are habits, and those are the little scaffoldings that you can put in place on your path to be a healthier person, mind, body, and spirit. Because it's easier to have pizza when you don't feel like cooking if you don't have a plan and you didn't take the chicken out, right? It's easier to skip a workout than write one up for yourself on a day that you don't feel like it, or spend longer surfing the internet for something to do for a workout than it would actually have taken to work out. Or if you don't have a devotional that you've picked out to read or something that you can sit down and just pick up the next day, it's easier to read the next page of your devotional than it is to search for a significant podcast every morning or a new passage to read each day. So it just gives you the logical next thing so that you don't have to think about it. All you can do is work on that behavior without deciding what to do next. The third thing that habits do are they curb your impulse and they strengthen your discipline. I love John C. Maxwell, and he says that everything worth pursuing is uphill. And in my experience, no one ever coasts into greatness. And so if you believe that you were loved into existence on purpose, with purpose, and for purpose, then you're not meant to just coast along and make it to bedtime. You're not meant to just hope everybody's okay at the end of this and go back to your grind. Like this time, as difficult as it is a purifying. And the way that you purify something is to burn off what doesn't belong. And it's not an easy process. It can be a very painful process. Or you can look at pruning. If any of you keep any kind of shrubbery or fruit bushes or anything like that, the pruning process is brutal. You have to cut back a lot in order to get what remains to really grow and flourish. And it works even on a small scale in a vegetable garden. You look at it and you grow a tomato plant and you're pinching off all of the little sucker branches so that all of the energy of the plant can grow into producing good fruit. It's not a fun process, but what you end up with is amazing. But you guys, the reason you want to strengthen that discipline is not to punish yourself, but because resistance comes when we're on the path of God's will. The evil one doesn't get in the way of somebody who's not pursuing God. Like, it's just a wide open door. Like, here you go. Coast that way. Yes, I'm still watching Netflix. Which doesn't mean that it doesn't mean that there's something wrong with sitting and watching television. But if you see this time as an opportunity, because honestly, a month from now, you will either be caught up on everything that Netflix has ever put out, or you will have had time to try something new that you feel like you haven't had the opportunity to try before, or get to know your kids or your spouse or somebody in a new way, even if it's really, really difficult to try to teach 3 different kids 3 different subjects at the same time and still be on call for work. You get a glimpse into how your child learns that maybe you haven't had before. Or you get to find out just how tough and how much of a badass you really are, that you really can do so much more than you thought. And then the fourth reason why habits is you got to put the big rocks in first. I thought about gathering all of the things for a visual display here, but I didn't have any sand and I didn't want to go out to the store and change my clothes and sanitize my whole car just for a illustration. So you'll just have to hear the telling of it. If you imagine that you have a jar and you have rocks and pebbles and sand and water. If you put the water and the sand in first and then the pebbles, and then you try to put the big rocks in, they don't fit. You got to look at everything and you got to put it in an organized fashion, right? It's like the Tetris of life. So you've got to put the rocks in first and then the pebbles, and they kind of fall in between the rocks, and then the sand, which kind of falls in between the pebbles, and then finally the water, which fills in all the remaining spaces, and it all fits. Your habits are kind of like if you were playing a game of Tetris, and you'd win every time if you had all of the pieces from the beginning and could kind of organize them before the game started, rather than scrambling frantically to decide where to put each piece as it falls. That's what makes the game hard, is that you only know one piece ahead of time what's coming. And your habits help you to construct your day in a way that puts all of the pieces of what's important to you in their rightful position. And then it exposes extra time. No one gets extra time, but it exposes extra time. And then you can say, you know what, this afternoon I'm going to sit and watch a movie with my kids. And that's all we're going to do for a couple hours. But I'm not frantic then at the end of the day about all the things that I didn't get done, because I got the most important stuff done right at first. And B, I knew all the pieces that are trying to go into my day. Because you can't do all the things, right? Everybody still has forces outside of you controlling or influencing your time. Many of you are trying to do a job from home now, and you've only been doing it for 2 weeks, which is really difficult. And a lot of you have more people in your house on a given day, at a given time than you normally do. But even if you are totally used to this, it's still valuable to evaluate your routines and decide who you want to be at the end of this. Because I don't know about you, but I've noticed my kids have been picking at each other a lot in the last couple of days. They're a lot sick of each other. And it's because we haven't been anywhere. We haven't been anywhere. And they really haven't been anywhere. Like, I went to the store once. My husband has been to the store a couple times. My kids have been nowhere. And we have a small farm and we have a little bit of property, not a ton, but there's enough for the kids to get out and run around and have some space. So they have not literally been cooped up inside. It did rain for several days, but they're still sick of each other, right? And there's a lot of things vying for your time, and you're breaking up a lot of fights and trying to keep all the pieces organized, and you can't do all the things. So I want to talk about, and this is the nitty gritty of it. That was a mosquito. I feel like that's really unfair that it's March and there's mosquitoes in Ohio. I want to talk about 3 pieces that I believe that should be part of your day, regardless of whatever else is going on, and regardless of those things you said you wanted to focus on at the beginning. And Susan, we're going to talk about that, getting into a habit of things, because it's a choice, right? It's a choice. And I'm going to give you a little bit of, not just you, Susan, anybody who's listening, a little bit of tough love and say, like, listen, how's what you're doing now working? Is it working? Are you happy with your situation? If you are, great. Great. I think there's always room for improvement. But if you're happy with the way things are going, great. If you're not, then try something different. And remember that Maxwell, who's like the king of all things leadership and all things growth, says that everything worth having is uphill. And I'm telling you, no one coasts into greatness. And it is not, it's simple, but it is not easy to cultivate good habits. You do have to make a decision and you do have to work at it. And a lot of times there is a sacrifice. But is what you're doing now working for you? And if it's not, then you have to try something different in order to get something different. If you keep doing what you've always done, you'll get what you've always gotten. So keep that in mind, because the first thing that I'm going to tell you is that you need to have a morning routine. So if there are 3 pieces that should be part of your day, no matter who you are or what's important to you, the first one is a morning routine. And it needs to start at least 30 minutes before you have to be on. Whatever that means. 30 minutes before your kids get up, 30 minutes before however long it takes you to get ready for work, which is a little bit laughable right now. But if you have a routine for getting ready for work that involves, taking a shower, eating breakfast, having coffee, putting makeup on, whatever it is, I mean, you can cancel it. For some of you are still going to work and still have to count your commute. However long that takes you, at least 30 minutes before that is when you need to get up. And don't just roll from your bed to the couch. Like, be intentional. And I got to tell you, I'm confident that there are rapid fire excuses running through your head right now. My kids get up when I get up. I'm a night owl. I'm tired. I get it. I get it. I have said them all, not the night owl part, but even people who aren't night owls don't like getting up extra early. My definition of early might be different than someone else's. Like my husband thinks 7 a.m. is asinine, right? So my definition of early might be different, but I don't like getting up at 5:30 in the morning. And you can work towards it. You also are allowed to tell your kids that they're not allowed to come out of their room before 7 in the morning or whatever time you pick, right? And you'd be like, well, my kids won't do that. I mean, they will eventually, but this is the hard part, right? And I have had kids that were such light sleepers that the moment I got up, they were up. And that was very frustrating. That was very frustrating. A day-old baby is different, Megan Kaufman. A day-old baby is different. But for the majority of us who don't have a day-old baby, I have 6 children. The oldest is 13 and the youngest is 1.5. So I have had a baby for an eternity. And you can't do it one way and have that same way work all the time. You do have to honor your season. But you really need to ask yourself the hard question. Is this an excuse? Am I giving myself permission to not grow in this area? And I understand if that's harsh, and I'm not sorry, because the whole point of this is for you to grow, right? And not just get up early for the sake of getting up early, so that you have time to have prayer, read or journal, have that moment of quiet, drink your warm cup of coffee, go to the bathroom before somebody's demanding something of you, practice some gratitude. And I did a video, I shared it in my group. And if you're not in my group and would like to see it, just ask the person who invited you and they can get the link for me about a different way of doing gratitude. I called it extended gratitude versus just writing down a list. But it takes some intentionality to do these things, and it takes some time. And I got to tell you, when I have been in the last couple of weeks kind of giving myself permission every about third day to just sleep in until my kids get up. And I don't love those days. It sounds good at the time, when my alarm goes off and I'm like, oh, I don't have to get up. But then I'm rushed. And I got to tell you, it changes the way I greet my kids in the morning. Because if I'm in bed fighting for one more minute of sleep when I hear them come down the stairs, I'm disappointed that they're awake. And if I'm up and sitting in my chair, even if I'm not finished with my list of things that I like to do in the morning, if I've gone to the bathroom and I have had a drink of water and I have said some prayers and I've read a little bit and I've done even half of the things on my list, then when my kids come down, I'm happy to see them. And when I look at what kind of mom do I want to be, how do I want my kids to feel when they see my reaction to them first thing in the morning? Do I want them to see me disappointed and frustrated and going, just wait a minute. Would you just wait a minute? Would you just let me go to the bathroom before you ask me 65 questions? That's not who I want my kids to see or how I want them to feel based on my reaction. That's not how I want anybody to see me react to them. Not just my kids. I mean, I feel the same way about my husband. You know what I mean? Now it's a little bit different because he doesn't bug me for a million things while I'm going to the bathroom. So that's not as funny of an example, but same thing is true of my husband. If he doesn't get up when I do, which is his choice, and I still get up and I still have prayed and I still have done my devotional. I still have, usually started a cup of coffee. I have done some things and I can greet whoever it is with a smile. You can do these things and get your feet under you. And frankly, it's super important if you've ever gotten to noon and realized you haven't eaten anything, and not on purpose. When you're like so worried about what everybody else needs first thing in the morning, or so rushed to get out the door, you haven't even had a chance to put anything in your own body. You really need to have that morning routine. And then the last piece of that morning routine that is the hardest one, that I will fully confess to you, I went through a season where I was really good at it and it slid a little bit, is not getting on your phone. The advice I was given was for the first hour that you were awake, regardless of when that was, not getting on your phone for the first hour. And that allows you to start the day on your terms, not on someone else's terms. You're not reading messages, you're not checking in, you're not inundated with a calendar of what you need to take care of, or the things that your boss doesn't want you to forget, or the assignment that the teacher wants your kids to do. You're starting your day on your terms. And then once you have gotten your feet under you, then you can start to welcome the needs of the people around you. So that's the first thing. The second thing that's a habit that you need to focus on, regardless of what those 2 or 3 things at the beginning that you wrote down, the second piece of it is your nutrition. Regardless of where you are in that journey or what is important to you on that journey, this time more than ever is when you need to be aware of that. And I have never been one who has touted a just kale and ice chips kind of thing. I don't want you to diet. I don't want you to be miserable, and I don't want you to feel deprived all the time. But there are jokes going around about, eating your whole quarantine stockpile in the first week, or now we have, people are going to have the COVID 15 versus the freshman 15 or something like that. But the truth is, all of a sudden, everybody's living a more sedentary life because a lot of people aren't even walking into work from the parking lot, right? You all of a sudden, it feels like you've been given this permission. All the jokes are, your new business casual is, well, I guess for me, it's always been kind of a messy bun and stretchy pants. But for a lot of people, that wasn't their normal weekly outfit. And now you can just hole up on the couch with your laptop and your blanket over your head, right? But right now, more than ever, you really need to be aware of that, especially if you struggle with depression and anxiety. Feeding your body things that don't serve your body will exacerbate those situations. They just will. And right now, not feeding your feelings. Right now, I've been seeing a lot of people like baking and cooking together, or cooking more from home than they normally do because they're not home normally as much as they are now. And those are beautiful things. And I don't want you to deprive yourself of that. If you bake bread with your kid, have a doggone piece of bread and enjoy it, and enjoy that memory that you're making with them. Don't be the one who's like, oh, I can't eat it, it's not on my diet, because you that experience is part of it. And again, from a biblical perspective, what did Jesus do with almost everybody he encountered? He broke bread and ate with them. Like, it is an important piece of community, and God gave you taste buds for a reason. But I got to tell you, friends, I have a daughter who likes to bake, and she's getting really good at it, which is really difficult. Last week, she made macaroons, orange sponge cake, and a double layered lemon cake, and bread. I was like, oh, you're killing me. Like, but I had a macaroon. I didn't have any of the lemon cake. I had a little bit of the sponge cake because it was my son's birthday. But I made a decision, and I started asking myself a new question. I want you to write this down. Don't ask yourself, what should I eat? Ask yourself, how do I want to feel? Write that on a piece of paper and stick it on your refrigerator. How do I want to feel? And that really helps, because then you're not saying no to yourself all day long. Because if you find yourself being tempted every time you walk through the kitchen, and you run out of gumption to keep saying no to yourself about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, that's why people eat mindlessly at the end of the day, because they're tired and they've stayed up too late, and they're tired of saying no to themselves, and they're bored and really should just go to bed. But they keep telling themselves, like, well, this is my only time to myself. Except it's not really productive time, and you're really just robbing yourself of sleep. So you should go to bed. But ask yourself that different question. How do I want to feel? That makes it easier for me. And like Kelly said in the chat, it's good to have a plan in advance, which is what I was trying to hit at the beginning, with the whole point of having a habit, and have what you can have in those times when you feel snacky that's better than what you might normally grab for. So that's the importance of a habit and a plan. Oh, are you looking at my notes? Because I just said cooking from home, staying up later than normal, importance of habits and a plan. That was next. And asking yourself a better question, how do I want to feel? I would recommend that you drink from the same water bottle or jar all day long, so you have a sense of how often you refill it. Because if you have some from one jar and some from another jar and some from another water bottle, you have no idea how much water you've had throughout the day. But even if you aren't tracking it in an app or something like that, drinking from the same jar, you have a sense of how much you've had to drink. And the last piece of nutrition is to say, make a list of healthy snacks and meals that you like. Make a list of what you like, because what I've noticed in myself, I have several autoimmune diseases that are significantly triggered by the food that I eat. And when my inflammation is high and my body is really reacting, I feel awful and my body hurts and my joints ache and I can't do anything and I feel awful. But then when I try to tighten the reins on my nutrition, I have a massive pity party and get overwhelmed by all the things now that I shouldn't have, and I'm gonna have to give up and all that kind of stuff. And so what helps me in that season is both asking myself how I want to feel, but also making a list of the healthy snacks and meals that I do like. Because your body is a living and holy sacrifice, pleasing to God. And that is a spiritual act of worship. That's Romans 12:1. Your sacrifice is a spiritual act of worship. So in those moments when you're really struggling, your sacrifice can be united with the suffering of Christ. That's what compassion means. Com meaning with, and passion meaning the sufferings of Jesus. And it can be offered for the consolation of other people who are struggling. So every time you say no to something that doesn't serve your body, you can pray for somebody who doesn't have enough to eat. And that's just a simple thing that you can do, but it gives purpose to your struggle. And so the third and last thing that I wanted to talk to you about in terms of habits is movement. This season can be your excuse or your opportunity. For any of this season can be your excuse or your opportunity. If you get to the end of it and you say, you know what, that was really hard and I did a lot of nothing, there's no judgment in that. But I'm going to again ask yourself, who do you want to have been when this is all over? Not perfect. If you say, well, I'm going to have been healthy, and then you have orange sponge cake, that doesn't mean you failed. It just means you had orange sponge cake. And then we move on. But if you can ask yourself a better question, how do I want to feel? Who do I want to have been at the end of this? And not let this season be your excuse. The reasons you can't exercise are not new. It's still time, money, space, kids, work, all the same excuses that you had before. But the good news is now, by nature of being on this call, you know someone who can connect you with the tools that you need, regardless of space, time, physical ability, budget, all that kind of stuff. We have a group that works out at 6 a.m. We have a lunch bunch that works out at 11 that includes kids. We have a team that works out on Saturday mornings, like all together for community. But the people who invited you have so many options in terms of what you can do based on your time, your facility, your equipment, your physical needs, your budget, all of it. There is no excuse other than really it comes down to, I'm just not going to do it. Right. And it doesn't matter whether or not you want to be perfect. If you've never worked out before in your life and you have health issues that make you feel like you can't, talk to the person who invited you and we will match you with something that will serve you in this season, because you have that opportunity to use your body as a temple of the Holy Spirit and glorify God in your body. If you get to the end of a call like this, because I said a lot, because I talk a lot. If you get to the end of something like this and you feel overwhelmed, or you feel like you're already trying to do so much with only relative success, and now it sounds like Sarah's saying, in order to please God, I have to do more. What the heck? First, pause and take a breath and thank God for the chance to hear what He wants from you and your family in order to be a good steward and in order to be of service. And then ask yourself, what does it make sense to focus on first? Not all 100 things, just the first one. In the beginning of the call, I asked you to write down 2 or 3 things that you felt like stood out to you as things you wanted to work on. What habit could you put in place this week that would move you closer to those things? Then the good news is, while none of us is perfect, the person who invited you here tonight is connected to an incredible team that comes around and holds up its people while they're trying to learn something new. That's what we do. We do it every month. We bring in people who are just getting started, who don't even know which way is up. And we help them take the first step. You cannot take 25 steps at once. Even if you jump, you can't go that far, right? You can only take one step at a time. And the person who invited you is connected to a massive team. And that's what we do. We help people take the first step. And we are not perfect. We just are a couple of steps ahead of the first step. That's it. Your permission to come as you are. I love that, Kelly. Wherever you are, because we all started at the beginning. Every single one of us. None of us started halfway through. We only started at the beginning. So look at this list of what you want to change and what you want to focus on, and talk to the person who invited you here tonight. Whether you need baby steps or mindset work, or you're ready to full out commit to a challenge group in April, or somewhere in between, this community is here and ready to surround you. We come together like this on Sunday nights, as well as in other ways, like I was saying, throughout the week. And we take advantage of the chance to build clear vision and grow and cultivate that peace and growth in this season. So look at what you want to be true of you at the end and what makes the most sense to work on first. And if you have no idea, just sit with that question for a minute, and I think it will reveal itself to you. Don't ask yourself, how am I going to do it all? That's a question that furthers the panic. Oh gosh, that mosquito. It's a little comic relief, at least for me. When you ask yourself, how am I going to do it all? That's a panic attack waiting to happen. You have to ask yourself, what makes the most sense to focus on first? And just sit with that for a minute. And then reach out and take the hand that's being extended to you tonight and be connected to this community. That's all I've got for you tonight. I know that was a ton of stuff. I'm so grateful for you having given some time to be here. Yeah. Kelly, do you have any more announcements or anything that you want to?
No, I think this is also good, Sarah. And I think that one thing that she said that I just want to restate it, because I don't want you to miss it, is the question of, how am I going to do all of this? Because I'm sure for a lot of us, we're asking that a lot. And last week we talked about, capturing, and we've talked about this in our groups, capturing your thoughts. And so tonight, if you're a person already in our challenge groups and you haven't been participating because life pulled the rug out from under you, you never have to send an apology to your coach or the challenge group. You just step right back in. And if you're a person that's in one of our free groups right now and you're trying to figure it out, you're in the right spot to figure it out. And you just start, like she said, with a simple thing, whether it's the morning waking up and a little bit earlier, or, we have, if you want to get up this early, our 6 a.m. group is called, now we changed it to call the Empower Hour. So you can get up and work out, you can get up and pray, you can get up and read, and at the end we pray. And y'all, there have been seasons I have autoimmune issues, and there were seasons I had chronic fatigue, and I was not allowed to get up early. I was told to sleep as much as I could. And so what I had to do in the morning when I did get up and my kids got out the door is I let my 2 littles watch a show so I could have 30 minutes before I did anything for them. But then I had to get to a point where I realized I didn't need to do that anymore. I was able to get up again, because what had once been necessary had turned into a kind of limiting excuse. And so if you're feeling that nudge inside tonight of I really do need to start exercising, that's permission for you to take that step. Like Sarah said, sit with it. And so, and then expect the resistance to hit, because your inner self is going to be like, no, we've been comfortable, but
that's when all those excuses, all of those reasons why it won't work, step in and you're going to be like, well, what if my baby wakes up halfway through my workout? It's like, okay, well then you stop.
Right. Yes.
Like,
yes. And that's when you can lean into the person who's with you in this, who invited you, to help you discern. I mean, even as coaches, we help one another discern. You know, there have been times I can be a very all or nothing person that I've had to ask people, like, should I do this? Or am I being like, am I doing too much? Because sometimes, you know, you question and you see and you want to keep up. You only have to keep up with yourself. Like, this isn't a competition with others. But there was so much good tonight. I'm excited just to review these things to see how it's going to bless you guys. And the last thing I wanted to mention is, if there are things that you need help with, that you want us to teach on, that you want to call on in the next few weeks, we're going to be learning leaning in as coaches, coordinating and planning these Sunday night Zooms. Please share what you need so that we can serve what you need, because otherwise we're assuming. And there's that really, well, inappropriate phrase of, like, you know what the word assume says.
yeah.
Anyway, but I'll let you close this with prayer if that's okay, Sarah. Thank you so much.
Sure.
This was phenomenal. Like, these calls are blessing me so much in this season, and I pray that they're blessing all of you as well. So
yeah, let's pray. Lord, thank you so much for this opportunity to get together. God bless the creators of Zoom, that it gives us a chance, not just in this season, but in the distance between us, to see each other's faces and hear each other's voices. And while nothing replaces physically being together, it gives us so much more opportunity to practice community than we would have had otherwise. Thank you for the people who made the sacrifice of time to be on the call, to listen to the recording, to share it with a friend who needed some encouragement. Lord, you are so good. And even though we don't understand your ways and we don't understand your path, we know that you care for us even more than you care for the birds of the sky and the fish of the sea and the animals that always have enough. And we trust your providence, we trust your will, and we trust your protection, and we trust your everlasting promise. Not that the road will be easy, but that you will be with us and you will help shoulder our burden. Lord, give us peace. Give us your peace that can only come from you, and help us to hold tight to it when things get scary, and to react within your peace when things get frustrating, and to extend your peace when we come to someone who's in need. Please bless and multiply our sleep, multiply our efforts, multiply our patience, and give us ears to hear what it is that you're calling us to this week. We love you, Lord, and we pray in Jesus' name. Amen.
thank you so much, Sarah. I'll get the recording up so we can share it. If you know someone that you want to share it with, please do. Thank you guys for leaning in tonight, and we'll see you in the groups.
Have a great night, guys. We'll see you later.